we're going to be PNM's proposed plan. There's a better plan that's available, that's lower in cost, that creates more jobs, that conserves more water, and PNM plan. And Albuquerque has the opportunity to defend the interests of Albuquerque's consumers. The PNM plan imposes higher costs on consumers. So under their plan, there would be a $91.7 million rate increase per year on our ratepayers. And again, particularly on our low-income communities, this is just unacceptable. We're already struggling in this state, and again, if there's a better alternative, we really need to consider that. Plus, this increased cost doesn't even take into account necessarily the increased costs, escalating costs in coal and nuclear production. There's an estimated 45% increase in production costs at the San Juan Generating Station by 2020 for coal production. And again, who's going to bear the burden of that? It's going to be the ratepayers. So again, there's alternative plans. We can do it better, create more jobs, use less water, and not saddle our ratepayers with these unreasonable costs. So we just urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Salas, Vicente Garcia, and Ted Polk.
Mr. President, councilors, thank you for staying up an extra 2 minutes to hear me. I'll try to make it a minute and a half. This affects me three ways. I'm a PNM shareholder, I'm a PNM ratepayer, and I'm an Albuquerque resident. As a PNM shareholder, with no conscience, sounds good. I think I'll probably make a little bit more money this way. As a PNM ratepayer, it doesn't sound good. My rates might stay lower for just a short time, but eventually they're going to go way up because we keep paying for fuel for nuclear plants, for coal plants, and we don't keep paying for fuel once solar and wind is producing. And as an Albuquerque resident, I'm seeing these plants use a lot of water. We've heard about that. It's all true. I'm a professional engineer who's worked in power all my life. I know that. We're using a lot of water. We're putting out more pollution than what you put out. We have jobs in Arizona, not New Mexico, and we're going to have to pay. Once we tap into this third unit of nuclear power, the ratepayers and the Albuquerque residents are going to have to be paying for that. Don't want any part of that. Please support this proposal.
Thank you. Vicente Garcia. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Vicente Garcia, and I'm the Latino Organizing Director for Conservation Voters New Mexico Education Fund. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I am here, of course, to urge you to support a resolution that will result in the city of Albuquerque sending a clear message to our state's regulation commission that we need to invest in affordable, clean, and healthy renewable energy. For our families, for young people, and our diverse communities throughout the state, we simply cannot afford to lose out on this critical opportunity to shape our future. And as the director of our Latino organizing program, I'm especially concerned about the impact on Latino families in Albuquerque and throughout the state. And we all know that as Latinos, as Chicanos, as Mexicanos, we, especially here in New Mexico, have a connection to the land. And we know that land cannot exist without water. Water is life, agua es vida. And how people have mentioned before, PNM's plan for fossil fuel relies heavily on water use. And renewable energy does not rely as much on that water use. So it is a better option in terms of saving our scarce water. In addition, PNM is not the best solution for our health. Burning coal contaminates our children, our air, our water, with arsenic, mercury, and carbon pollution. According to the San Juan Citizens Alliance, the coal plant in northwest New Mexico station has caused per year 33 premature deaths, 600 asthma attacks, and 31 asthma-related emergency visits. Clearly, this is not the world we want to live in. And living in Albuquerque, consuming most of the energy that comes to the state, we need to trust that our energy comes from cleaner sources. Clean, renewable energy is the way of our future, and it does not contaminate our water, our air, or put our children at risk. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Ted Cloak, followed by Heidi Brooks, followed by Philip Lindsay. Welcome, sir.
Mr. President, councilors, my name is Ted Cloak. I'm a 35-year resident of New Mexico. I have 6 kilowatts of solar energy on my roof, which I'm very happy with. My predecessors have said it all, I think. I just thought of one thing that I picked up along the way learning about this matter. If we go for solar, particularly, we can have the generation close by, very near Albuquerque, say between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. This reduces energy loss, another benefit, and it also creates jobs in our own neighborhood. So another point that's been made is that wind farms are very, very popular with the ranching community in New Mexico. And that's something we've got to think about too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker is Heidi Brooks, followed by Philip Lindsay. Welcome.
Good evening, President Sanchez and councilors. My name is Heidi Brooks. I am active with the Citizens Climate Coalition. You might remember my name because I wrote to each of you an email in the last couple of weeks in which I stressed the National Climate Assessment and the particular section that focused on the projections for our southwest region of the country. Things like the expected temperature increases, the diminished runoff, the destruction of our forests, and the alternative energies that we could be employing here in the state of New Mexico. So those sorts of projections, I think, impress upon, if they did upon me, and I hope upon you, the dire urgency that there is in order to change our ways, to really take advantage of this unique opportunity to make sure that our decisions going forward on our energy consumption and our energy generation are wise ones, because we won't get a do-over. In addition, I just want to add something that I don't think anybody else has added, and that is that a lot of times this issue is considered an issue that is exclusive to environmentalists. That's not true. A group called BICEP, which stands for Business for Innovative Climate and Energy Policy, has initiated a climate change declaration. And on this declaration, I don't know if you can see all this, there are companies like Microsoft, Apple, Intel, GM, it goes on and on and on. There are hundreds of companies on this climate declaration. It is across the board a great idea for not only individuals and environmentalists, but businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Philip Lindsay, followed by Odeli Delabayo Jarder, followed by Maggie Seeley. Welcome.
Thank you, President, members of the council. My name is Philip Lindsay. I'm an organizer with New Energy Economy, and I'm a recent graduate of New Mexico Small Business Association's Renewable Energy Institute. Basically, the institute's put on by the labs and the Small Business Association to teach small businesses how to take advantage of the land they might own or their businesses to develop small bulk power generation. And I learned a lot at this institute. One thing I learned is we could power New Mexico 8 times over just with our wind and solar. And these aren't just something statistics. This is Los Alamos laboratory scientists telling us this. We learned a lot about renewable energy in New Mexico at this institute, but one thing we learned was that there was a lack, or one thing I took away rather, was that there was a lack of political support in New Mexico compared to other states. Whereas in other states, governments were getting behind their landowners and their businesses to support renewable energy when they had the resources, Texas, Arizona, California, Colorado. In New Mexico, we were kind of stagnating. We weren't doing much. In fact, in some areas, we were regressing. one rancher from, well, actually, he lives in Albuquerque, but he has land in eastern New Mexico. He told me, he put it this way, he said, why isn't the government behind us, like in Texas, to make this happen? What can't they see? We have the wind, we have the resources. That's the first point I want to make. The second point, I want to reiterate something that I think wasn't touched upon before, and that was that really this resolution is about not shifting the burden onto the ratepayers from PNM's old investments, right? The investments that they made 10, 20, 30 years ago, the decisions that they made are now coming back to haunt them because of new regulations and because of competition. And I just want to make that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Odeli de la Payo Jardere, followed by Maggie Seeley. Do you want to go and state that for the record? See how bad I butchered?
So, sorry, my name is a French name. It's Odile de la Bollardière. It's very easy to pronounce. So I think that now in New Mexico and Albuquerque, we have an outstanding opportunity to reduce CO2 and other pollutants. And it's extremely important that we take advantage of it and we use strictly wind and solar to fabricate the needed power. And I think that's very important for our children, our grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren, and I know that when they become adults, they are going to be absolutely mad at our generations. We've ignored this problem for way too long. It's about time that we look into it. And what I think that maybe something that could be done in New Mexico and particularly here in Albuquerque is if you guys could find some funds somehow to increase the amount of money that people get when they put solar panels in their roofs or where industry could put solar panels in the roofs, then that would really help generate enough electricity in time, because I know it's a big deal to fabricate those big windmills. It's a big deal to fabricate those enormous solar panels. However, as a person, we could really have many more individuals fabricating their own electricity and putting it on the grid. And I think that might help, because it's a different group, it's a different type of work that is being done. So try to think about it, try to be creative, and to push more people in Albuquerque to use solar panels in their roof. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maggie Seeley, followed by Barbara Leonard, followed by Dr. Robert Bernstein, followed by Cynthia Hall. And again, once your name has been called, we have seating available at the front. Would you please come forward?
Good evening, counselors. My name is Maggie Seeley. I'm with the Sustainability Studies Department at the University of New Mexico. Number one, when I moved to New Mexico 26 years ago, our GDP in this state was about, out of 50 states, it was around 45th, 46th. Now it's 2014 and we've sunk to 49th or 50th. PNM is a very profitable, prosperous company with a very large R&D budget. It can easily be employed to look at the incredible infrastructure that would be created to put solar and wind and PV in an equal marketplace with oil and coal. So we have a challenge. We can be the clean energy state. We can be, a state that's proud, that raises its GDP by providing jobs in a new energy, clean energy economy. We can be proud to come to Albuquerque because the air is clean, there are plenty of jobs, our school children aren't falling apart with asthma, and we will actually have the ability to create space for a healthy environment for our grandchildren. So let's look at supporting this resolution, and let's look at participating with PNM to create clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara Leonard, followed by Dr. Robert Bernstein. Barbara Leonard, Dr. Robert Bernstein. Thank you, sir. Followed by Cynthia Hall. Ms. Hall, if you're here, would you come down, please? Marlene Perot. Thank you, Doctor. Go ahead.
Thank you. You can talk straight already. Thank you all. I'm Robert Bernstein. I'm a physician here in Albuquerque, also in Santa Fe. I've been in New Mexico 34 years. And I know you all are very happy to enforce the 2-minute warning. I'm real happy that you're all doing that because I've had to get up early and see patients in the morning. I'll be real quick. It's health. My part on this is health. When we burn coal, we have serious health effects.
Excuse me, Doctor. Would you move the microphone over?
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry. Okay, so do I need to repeat anything? I'm a physician in New Mexico, 2 daughters born and raised here, UNM graduates. When we burn coal, we have serious immediate health effects. These include links to heart disease, strokes, lung cancer, and asthma, which already affects 1 out of 14 kids. The health effects are due to the pollution that comes when we burn coal. One of the serious pollutants is mercury, which is a neurologic toxin, affects our kids' brains. It causes learning disabilities, can cause seizures, blindness. I think I'd just be real brief. For the health of our kids and our grandchildren, and for the kids and grandchildren of all New Mexicans, I strongly urge the council to support this resolution. And I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Cynthia Hall. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Hall, and I'm the Vice President of the Renewable Energy Industry Association of New Mexico, an organization dedicated to supporting and developing the use of renewable energy technologies in New Mexico. Your voting yes on this resolution would send a message to several audiences. One, the renewable energy industry, that the City Council supports creating good jobs in a growth industry that holds the promise to strengthen New Mexico's economy in the long run. 2, to New Mexico citizens who would like to think that New Mexico is a place where government officials can agree on a path going forward that would lead to more prosperity and also a better environment. Another audience is people outside the state who are given the impression that Albuquerque is not afraid to take a stand on encouraging the use of newer technologies to address problems associated with health and the environment. The 4th audience, I think, is the most important, is young people, many of whom are very unhappy with their parents' generation for the environmental problems that they're seeing unfolding before their eyes and that they know they will have to find ways to cope with. Voting yes on this resolution is an opportunity for the Albuquerque City Council to lead by example to other cities in New Mexico and in other states, that policy decisions be guided by an appreciation that economic prosperity can and must be linked to the health of citizens and the environment. I encourage you to vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Marlene Karate, followed by Joan Brown, followed by Regina Hoover. Welcome.
Good evening, President and members of the Council. I am Marlene Parrott. I'm a Sister of Mercy and member of the Partnership for Earth Spirituality. I am here in support of R 1459 and hope that Albuquerque will have a clear, strong, unanimous voice to PRC that we want clean energy. PNM's retiring of 2 of the stacks from the San Juan plant fails to adequately address a long-range plan
to phase out the carbon emitter coal, nor does it have an imperative commitment of an immediate transition to renewable energy of wind and solar. I think because of their resources, they can delay and delay and delay and delay till we squeeze the last dollar and then put money somewhere else. I am very grateful that this proposal on page 3, the first 2 sentences, talks about saving our water and getting rid of extractive industries that use waste for extractions and for containing its waste. But I'm particularly grateful for what is said, lines 7 to 23, on nuclear energy, that you're lifting up the true cost. I think, as Councillor Garduño said, we have Los Alamos, we have Sandia's waste, we have WIP's waste, we have Eunice's waste, we have the Grant's Mineral Belt waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Brown, followed by Regina Wheeler.
Thank you, President and Councilors. My name is Joan Brown. I'm a Franciscan sister, and I'm the Executive Director of New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light. We work with faith communities all over the state, addressing care, creation, and climate change. And our faith communities are very concerned about coal, the future of coal, that we continue to have. We believe that there needs to be a real phase-out program within the proposal to move to more renewable energy. You know, I just finished a retreat of 4 days with children and their adults, their parents and mentors. And there were 2 children with one mother. And she said, I don't know what to do with my children because they know about climate change. One was 7 and one was going to the 4th grade. And she said, the 4th grader gets really depressed. And he says, why aren't we doing something? And he says, she said, he needs to be active. He needs to be knowing that we're making changes, that we're doing something. And so this is increasingly a moral and an ethical issue, and that's why the faith communities are very engaged with this, as well as the Vatican. At the end of May, the Vatican had a meeting on sustainable humanity, sustainable nature, and our responsibility. And at that summit, there were all kinds of leaders. And one of the statements that came out of that from Pope Francis, he said, he urged the world to safeguard creation, because if we destroy creation, creation will destroy us. Never forget this. And he was urging all civic leaders, any leaders, to really act responsibly and with moral and ethical integrity on issues addressing climate change, CO2 emissions, and water. In this state, it really is about water, and it is a sacred trust that we've been given, and we really need to act on that. I have a letter that is signed by a number of faith leaders here in Albuquerque, including the Executive Director of New Mexico Conference of Churches, and I would like to just give that to you. It also has a map on it showing that New Mexico, again, is last as one of the largest emitters of CO2 in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Leave that with staff and I'll distribute that to the council. Thank you. Regina Wheeler. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President and councilors. Thank you so much for considering this item. It's a really important issue before us right now and a real opportunity for you to take leadership. I'm the CEO of Positive Energy Solar. We're a local solar company with a big office here in Albuquerque. And I wanted to give you some visibility into what's been really happening on the ground over the past many years as the solar has become more and more adoption across our state. You can be sure that there's a huge demand for solar by individuals. You've had a couple of people approach the podium today and say that they have solar on their roofs. And what we're seeing inside our solar company is an enormous demand because it gives people an opportunity to fix their long-term energy costs and hedge that bet against a very uncertain future of what future costs will be. And it's also clean and it's the right thing to do. Their children urge them to do it and it makes them feel good to do it, but they do it because it's an economically feasible alternative. Solar's been really catching on because PNM has been installing more and more solar because it's an economically feasible alternative. And as a result of these programs that have been happening locally, our business has been growing and other local businesses like ours. I'm a graduate of UNM and now I'm the CEO of this local solar company. I hire youth out of the CNM training programs out of University of New Mexico. And, you know, it's really inspiring to me to give young people great career opportunities with benefits in a field that they really want to work in and keep them from leaving the state. So it's really been working for New Mexico. The solar industry is growing. There's other companies like ours. Also, we're an employee-owned company, so all of our profits stay in New Mexico. So they're not leaving the state like they do with PNM when you have owners outside of the state. So there's just a lot of economic development and job growth, and it's the real thing that's happening. We're working in it. I'm hiring every day. We hired 12 people in the last 3 months. We need 16 more people right now, and I don't see the demand increasing anytime soon. So this is a really important action to take because soon the requirements for solar will have been reached by the renewable portfolio standard. So I'll urge your support on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker on this agenda item is going to be Kevin Bean. It looks like Kevin has left the building.
Place here.
Okay, sir. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. President Sanchez, members of the council, my name is Kevin Bean. I'd like to urge your support for this resolution. I'd like to bring up an issue that I haven't heard tonight, which is the budget. You all know about budgets, of course. You deal with these matters all the time. You're experts on this. But a budget you may not have heard about is the carbon budget. And that's really what this is all about in my mind. Because according to the carbon budget, we've got about 14 years left before that budget is expended at current rates of expenditures. That means that in 14 years, we will have used up our total carbon allowance if we're going to stay below that 2-degree threshold that 167 countries have said we're going to stay below, that's the maximum. PNM's plan might have made sense 20 years ago. It doesn't make sense today. We have to do everything we can and more to move to renewables as quickly as possible. This resolution is definitely a step in the right direction, and I encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. We are back on the floor with the council members. Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Mr. Peter Gould is in the audience, and I'd like to ask some questions. He's with NEMIAC, and if I'm correct, he's representing the city on this rate case. Welcome, Mr. Gould. Thanks for being here.
Good evening. Thank you.
And I think you've represented the city of Albuquerque in many, many rate cases against PNM.
Since 2009, I think is when the city joined NEMIAC, 2009, 2010 timeframe. And we probably represented you in 25, 30 cases since then.
Mr. Gould, can you say, what does NEMIAC represent? What's the name?
New Mexico Industrial Energy Consumers. It's kind of a misnomer now because we've added the city of Albuquerque and University of New Mexico. We also represent manufacturers such as Intel, GCC Rio Grande, which runs the cement plant out in Tejeras, and a couple of smaller users in Albuquerque.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you some questions on this resolution. And when I first heard about this resolution, and I think this is a forced substitute, so it looks a little better, but I was worried for us, the city, to pass this is that it might tie our hands in any negotiations with PNM and working with the PRC. So would you tell me, do you think that this resolution has any teeth to it, and also will it help us or hurt us in the dealing with PNM and the PRC?
Well, that question kind of puts me in a little bit of a difficult situation because you're the client, so you should be recommending what you want me to do and the rest of the group to do, and then we're going to try to go ahead and accomplish that. But as a lawyer, I'm always uncomfortable with putting all my cards on the table until I know everything. And we're still studying PNM's plan, the alternatives that are going to be proposed by New Energy Economy and many others. We're also looking at this case in a comprehensive fashion because, as you're aware, the President announced a climate action plan both for new plants and for existing plants and some EPA rules this last week. The plans for existing plants, and I'm going on a little long, but I'm just, is a proposed rule, but we're trying to take a comprehensive look at it. What I do believe this is going to be a case that's going to have to be negotiated. And I think that in that negotiation, we're not going to get the optimal result. We're going to have to take a little bit of everything that's good. One of the things I'll note from the President's plan is that New Mexico has a 34% reduction in CO2 as the target by 2030. And one of the suggestions that's being made by EPA is that we utilize more nuclear resources. Now there's downsides, of course, but even the President's plan does not recommend the shutting down of all existing plants. It recommends retrofits and other approaches. So, Councilor Winter, I'm a little bit at a loss. I don't want my hands tied, but at the same time, we do need to consider every single alternative. We have hired some nationally recognized plan engineers to look at everybody's plan. One of the problems is the PNM keeps on changing the story. We had a filing last month in which they adjusted all their load tables. They've not done the necessary work to re-examine all the base cases that they looked at, and that's what we're looking at now, is forcing them to go back and rerun all their programs and see what makes sense, not only in terms of the environment, but in terms of affordability. So that's a long answer. I apologize.
I just don't want to put you on the spot, but my concern is you know, and you represent the city of Albuquerque, but also the ratepayers out there. And we want to do everything that we can to make it better for the city of Albuquerque's ratepayers, as well as the city of Albuquerque too. And well, my concern is I'm just not sure one way or the other if this resolution will help or will hurt in that respect when we start negotiating or working with the PRC.
That is an open question. When you're taking 400 megawatts, that's a fifth of PNM's current load. Best estimates are between $750 million and $1 billion best case. So I have real concerns about what this is going to do to rates, what's this going to do to the opportunities that people have to be employed, and to the most vulnerable ratepayers. So we always try to work with, we have a history of working with the Attorney General's office, with the commission staff, and with other entities that are consumer interest, the Albuquerque Water Authority as well. And we've really tried to not go our own way and try to get a special break for our members, but look at something that's best for all the consumers. And I do have real concerns about what any plan is going to cost. So for me, that's the bottom line. We need to keep energy affordable. That's, you know, we're trying to recover from this downturn in the economy, and if we keep on adding 30-40% to our electric rates, recovery is going to be very, very difficult.
Councilor Bender, then Councilor Gardino, and then Council Vice President Jones.
So, Mr. Gould, I'm sure you never have unanimity on the part of all your members. There are probably a variety of opinions, no shortage of opinions probably amongst the various members.
Mr. President, Councilor Benton, you've heard the expression herding cats?
Right. So we're one of those cats, and we're pretty big.
You
cat.
are.
We're a pretty big cat, city of Albuquerque.
You're kind of the mountain lion.
and I think if you read the language of the bill substitute, this is in no way intended to just beat up or pile on to PNM. However, I think, you know, as an expression, if it were to pass, of the sense of this council, at least, it gives you some direction. It gives you some sense of where we're coming from. I think we are, with the bill, trying to look certainly at the interests of ratepayers, but the long-term interests of ratepayers as well, and then also the economy itself, as it has been pointed out. and understanding that nuclear is part of the federal government's answer to our needs. That the Arizona plant is based in Arizona. Most of the money is going to stay in Arizona. Certainly is a benefit to PNM to sell off some fairly expensive energy to ourselves or to our consumers, and so I think that's part of it. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to make that point. I appreciate your forthrightness in not just wanting to say, well, we're against it. I know that this is going to be a negotiation process, but and my hope would be that this would be an aid to you in negotiation and an aid to other members of NIMIAC to discuss these issues.
Mr. President, Councilor Benton, on that point, we did have a very productive meeting with, I think, some members of your staff and some members of Councilor Gibson's staff. We met with Mr. Melendez and Diane Dolan and Chris Sullivan, and we worked on the language, and I think it's a much improved, my opinion, and the way that the action items are give us the necessary flexibility to work with the other parties and not to be. We're going to have to make some concessions, but it does help to get very specific directions from our clients.
Councilor Daniel?
Thanks, President Legault. I realize that you don't want to, what was it you said? Put down all your cars or something like that. Anyway, I'm not asking you the same question again, but I am musing on the fact that how could it possibly be harder for you to have the fact that your largest, at least from the largest participant, saying that this is what we want. To go into a negotiating situation with that, one of those cards would be very helpful, I would think. Besides that, I can't imagine not being able to convince the other folks, I don't know who they are, the members, that how could they not support something like that when it's to the benefit of not only their locale, but the entire state. So with that, I would hope that, you said the city was your client, but I would take that a little further, and it's really the ratepayers of the city that are your clients. We're just the representatives of those.
No, I agree with that Mr. President, Councilor Gordon, the ratepayers are the ultimate concern here.
And that's who I think we should be talking about. Thank you.
Council Vice President Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir, for being here and giving us some good information. There are a couple of things that I want to say, and I'm listening to the people with so much passion and so much desire for solar and renewable energy, and I think we all feel that way. But I can't help but note that simply shutting down the coal plant and then saying, waving the magic wand and saying now we're going to have renewable solar wind energy is going to happen without a cost to the ratepayers. As I understand it, if we were to, if PNM were to choose to go that way, the cost to the ratepayers will increase as they build these facilities and make this happen. Am I wrong in that assumption?
Mr. President, Councilor Jones, that's the problem that everybody is facing. We're in an energy market that is undergoing a lot of transformation. The easy answer is yes, it's going to cost more. There are risks that have to be associated with every single outcome. If you just took all of the coal off the system tomorrow, you would have serious reliability problems. You would also have serious cost, I believe, serious cost inflation. So the way that the New Mexico legislature's approached this is to bring in solars and wind and biomass and geothermal on a schedule under the Renewable Energy Act and gradually phase that in at the same time that you're phasing out other alternatives. And I believe that's a reasonable approach. I don't think you can do it overnight. I think you need to integrate these variable renewables into the system. You have reliability issues, you have dispatch issues, you have cost issues. But what we found is, as that process has occurred, solar has dropped precipitously. There was a plant that was built in 2010. It cost the ratepayers $100 million. The plant that PNM proposed last year, same size, $50 million. So we are, and I think that's the value of doing these things in a very gradual, rational approach. And that's sort of what we've been pushing. See, we need to balance those issues. We need to appropriately assign the risk. We need to do something that's legal and proper for PNM at the same time. So there's a lot of balancing that goes on. But you're right, if we try to do it overnight, I think we're going to have a disastrous effect on rates.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. President.
Go proceed.
Here's the big question. If this resolution passes, we're going to have a positive, negative, or basically no effect on your negotiations if you work through this.
I don't know.
Very
Mr.
good.
President,
That was very correct. Thank you.
PNM just changed the game rules in this case 20 days ago, and they still haven't admitted that they changed the base case. Our engineers were going to have them run a bunch of different scenarios to examine the cost of all these outcomes, and now we can't do it because they have to reset their base case. So, I mean, it's a difficult case. I mean, we're waiting until July 15th to kind of figure out what the proposal is with the San Juan plant. They've changed the proposal. They've changed the cost basis. They've changed their load forecast, and at the same time, they're trying to maintain that nothing has changed in the case you go forward. In many ways, this case really isn't ready for prime time. They don't have enough certainty about a lot of the options, and they haven't studied, I don't think, my personal opinion, enough of the options to actually have a lot of the cost information that we need to make an intelligent decision, that the council needs to make an intelligent decision. So we're kind of betwixt and between. We're still pursuing discovery. The case schedule is probably going to be pushed out another 60, 90 days. So we're kind of in the middle of things. So I don't know how this resolution would impact those negotiations. You get into a room and you kind of have to do some horse trading. And, we clearly would not make any deal without bringing it back to the city and to all the members and say, here's what we think is the downside, here's the upside, and here's where we're at, and here's where we're recommending you go.
Thank you, sir. One more question.
Sure, no problem. I know I'm sounding like, an economist on one hand, and
you're doing a very good job. So, will this resolution have any legal impact or requirement on PNM?
No.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding when will this be heard by the Public Regulatory Commission?
Currently, PNM has requested a hearing, if I'm recalling correctly, at the end of October. The current schedule has a hearing at the end of August, but PNM has admitted that there's some fundamental changes, and I think that once we get into the information they're going to file here in about 6 weeks, we're going to find those changes are even more fundamental, and we might push it out even further, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Winter and then Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Gould, do you think, what I'm hearing is either PNM is not sure what they're doing or they're pulling the wool over everybody's eyes? How would you respond to that?
I've been doing this since 1988, and I told somebody one time that I always find out what PNM is doing about 2 years after they've done it. So I think they're more, I don't want to be unfair. I think that there is some uncertainty because they've anticipated, Councilor Winter and Mr. President, a certain outcome with the negotiations at the San Juan plant with the California entities that own a big chunk of Unit 4 and their projections were much too rosy. Now they realize that they're going to have to go back to the drawing board with some of those owners. They have to deal with them because all of those owners have a vote on the board that runs San Juan. So I just think they got way ahead of themselves, and now they can't deliver, and they have to reset the clock.
Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Poole, I don't know whether this is just a real statement, but you mentioned something about it. I think in Councilor Jones's discussion, there was this idea that we would change over to wind and solar tomorrow. And all of us are, I think, smart enough to know that that's not going to happen.
Right.
However, I wanted to change the discussion a little bit. This discussion didn't start yesterday. Solar has been talked about as an energy source since 1974, when gas was at whatever it was, when people were lining up to get gas and petroleum was very expensive and all of those things. Sandia Labs had these tremendous arrays of solar panels that were producing electricity, heating up turbines and all kinds of things. Gas goes down to $1.25 or whatever it was. All of a sudden, all of those arrays are destroyed, plowed under, whatever. That was 1974. 2001, I believe it was. The narrative then changed over to clean coal. Never heard of such a thing until then. But that was another one of those half steps by telling people, well, no, we're using clean coal. Well, there's no such thing, first of all. So these kinds of delays are, just at best, dishonest. So for any of us to then say, well, this discussion just started yesterday or the day before, and we can't make those changes that quickly, it's just disingenuous. This discussion has been going on for years and years and years, and it's the people in power that have made these decisions, these conscious decisions, to make sure that the rest of us, especially ratepayers, don't really understand what's going on. And these discussions are esoteric discussions at best, and in some cases, all of us are just too dumb to understand. And really, once we start using clean coal, everything will be fine. Once we start doing nuclear power as an alternative, everything will be fine. Well, we've heard the discussion already. There's no such thing as clean nuclear energy either. I don't care what anybody says. Just go down to Carlsbad. Well, don't go down there. Who knows what's going on down there. The point being that we have, for many years, since 1974, been discussing solar energy and many alternate sources of energy, wind being a more recent than solar. And yet, we're all told that, all of these things can't happen overnight. Well, 74 is not overnight, and I don't know what we've been doing meanwhile, except to, believe what we're being told by the people in power. Did anybody catch that? The people that deal in power. So, Mr. President, not only is it instructive, but in some ways I think it's a way for us to say, we want to be part of this discussion. And I think it would be, I would hope, another arrow in your quiver when you go to negotiate, that there are some folks who are not real happy. I know I'm not. It's all about that way.
Mr. President and Councilor Virginio, I think you're exactly right. I think that reached ahead in 2005, that whole process, and the state decided as a policy, we need to mandate renewable portfolio standard, and we've supported that. So I think we are moving in the right direction. And what we're finding is the technology is actually starting to catch up. I mean, we had many years where the technology wasn't there, where it was reliable enough, but we're getting to the point now where wind turbines are almost at a par with the avoided fuel, and they should be brought on, not even under the portfolio standard, but as a they should be brought on as part of the standard mix. There's no simple solution. The more wind you bring on, you have to bring on more fast start gas, which is necessary to basically pick up the load if the wind drops out. So there's no silver bullet, but I think we are moving in the right direction, and I appreciate the fact that you need to inform me as your attorney. Here's what we want. Here's the direction we need to go. And I will offer one other thing. We do have, once we get our engineers have done their analysis, we'll bring them back before this council. We'll bring them before this council, and we'll provide a report if you'd like to see that. And we're going to be filing testimony in this case, supporting some options, and we will certainly, when we make a definitive statement, come back to this council, Mr. President, and Councilor Virginia.
Councilor Harrison and Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an issue which is important to social policy, and a lot of reasonable minds have a lot of ideas, and some see them differ, but we spent well over an hour on this. This is only tangentially a city council issue. This is a symbolic piece of legislation. After I would call the question.
I didn't hear that.
Move to call the question.
We have a motion and a second to call the question. There is a motion to call the question. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no? No. That fails. Councilor Bennett.
I think we can wrap this up here. I'd like to let Councilor Gibson close, but I just quickly to point out the key points of Section 1. Approving the revised implementation plan, which is already agreed to. That's sort of mom and apple pie. Require that PNM's replacement power plan be designed to achieve a portfolio including as much renewable resources as is consistent with the needs of good environmental stewardship, system reliability, economic development, and customer affordability. I don't see how anyone can disagree with that. And keep in mind, this is not directing PNM. This is directing the PRC. This is expressing the council's intent to the PRC to have the PRC help PNM do the right thing if we were to pass this. So it's in no way intended to somehow require us requiring something of PNM. And I would disagree that we should not have a voice through our lobbying arm on such issues with state PRC. So I don't think this is an important matter. Deny or reduce the claim for stranded assets for the power plant. Require that PNM consider all options to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, and then consider the total environmental, health, and societal costs. Those are important societal goals, certainly, and economic goals. So the points have been made, I think, very well made by the various speakers, about water, about jobs, Arizona jobs versus New Mexico jobs, and about this long-term economic sense for our consumers, and long-term emphasis on the long term.
Before we proceed, let's go ahead and Council Vice President Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to extend the meeting until 10:45.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and extend the meeting until 10:45. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed? That carries on 8 to 0 vote. Let's proceed. Councilor Gibson. Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess if I knew this legislation was going to help the ratepayer of Albuquerque, I would support it wholeheartedly. And I guess I'm not sure at this point. But Mr. Good, I would really like when your engineers dwell in all the different plans, find out what the cost of those plans are, that you come back to this council and let us know what PNM is thinking, what their plan is, what alternative energy and what that plan is too, so that we have a better understanding. Because at this point, I don't know, I'm pretty confused as far as PNM, and it looks like they're pretty confused too. So I would just appreciate if you would do that.
Mr. President, Mr. Werner will make that, Councilor will make that commitment, and I don't need to be too hard on PNM. This we're probably in an unprecedented era of change in the energy markets, and if anybody could predict how it's going to come out, he could retire tomorrow, sell his services to the highest bidder. Nobody quite knows how this is going to turn out. Nobody expected 5 years ago that we would have gas, natural gas, at $3 a unit. Now, everybody was predicting 7, 8, 10, which changes the economics of everything. So this market is changing so rapidly. It's sort of anybody's guess, but yes, we'll bring our engineers right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gibson to close on R-59 as substitute.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to talk very long, because I think this has been talked about an awful lot. But I think that Councilor Benton did a really good summary. This is definitely states a policy that asks MINIAC, rather the city, to work with MINIAC to lobby the PRC for very simple things, to work an implementation plan that's going to be in the best interest of ratepayers, and on so many different fronts, this just makes sense. As Mr. Gould just stated, we are in an unprecedented period of change. This is maybe our one shot in maybe a generation, maybe longer, to really set the course towards renewable energies. And although this piece of legislation does not do that, it does put us on that course. So I urge your support. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to adopt R-59 as substituted. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Opposed?
No.
That carries on a 5-3 vote. We are now under item K, RA-1, as amending the City Council rules of procedure regarding public